In the early 1980s, thousands of people from around the world began arriving in a remote part of Central Oregon. They came to be near this man, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh.
Nobody knew who this guy was or what he was doing, and he bought this big ranch, so he obviously had money.
They were determined to build a utopian community in the desert. The tension between the locals and the Rajneeshis flared almost immediately.
If you live in the country, you kind of like the country to remain the way it is. They were changing things.
As two cultures collided, things would ultimately go terribly wrong.
They don't know what celebration is. They've never been able to celebrate in their lives. They're trying to walk prudence.
There were bumper stickers with a picture of Bhagwan's Rolls Royce with a bullseye. Better dead than red.
I tell you, the county is so f***ing bigoted, it deserves to be taken over.
Is it a classic story of greed and power, or is it another story of people who can't get around a strange religion moving into their neighborhood? You know, I don't know. It's all of those things.
Funding for Oregon Experience is provided by the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Robert D. and Marcia H. Randall Fund for Lifelong Learning, the Oregon Cultural Trust, the Roundhouse Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
I think it was the last of June in 1981. I went into the store. We had a little grocery store, post office combination at the time. There were several fellows in red jeans buying beer. Seemed nice enough. That was the first time I saw them.
A few miles from Antelope, the Big Muddy Ranch was 100 square miles of overgrazed hilly rangeland.
And someone said that a cult had bought Muddy. We sort of joked about it, you know. How about that? We'll have our own cult.
The buyer had come from India. Married to an American, she had signed the deed, Sheila Silverman. But Oregonians would know her as Ma Anand Sheila, secretary to Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, regarded by disciples to be an enlightened master. Until coming to the U.S. in 1981, Bhagwan had never left India. But he was already one of the most photographed and recorded spiritual figures anywhere.
You are truth, you are love, you are bliss, you are freedom.
He claimed a network of 200,000 disciples in 400 centers around the world. Well-educated and once a philosophy professor, Bhagwan urged his disciples to live in the moment, to know themselves.
He said, I'm not here to tell you the truth. I am here to help you find the truth. Because if I tell it to you, it's still just some words. You have to find it yourself.
He depicted most organized religions as self-serving. He said they lead people away from life's real goal of enlightenment.
Now Jesus is just a salesman saying, come, follow me. And those who will not follow me will fall into dark hell for eternity. Now this man is not going to help anybody.
Meditation is vital, said Bhagwan, but so is celebrating the joy and passion of life. His vision of the new man was both earthy and divine, sensuous and spiritual. In his words, a Zorba the Buddha.
It was the notion that material comfort was a prerequisite to enlightenment. To fully cultivate your spiritual self, You have to be ready and able to enjoy life to its fullest.
Bhagwan's message appealed to a wide range of people, including many well-to-do and successful Westerners. Some of them were now showing up in Oregon.
Well, I sold my Porsche for $20,000. I sent it for helping to buy the ranch. Most of us gave whatever we had.
Once here, at Rancho Rajneesh, everyone went to work on the early stages of the commune they envisioned. Bhagwan himself arrived in late August 1981.
People were curious about the Rajneeshis, who they were, why they were there, what they were up to, and the subject of a lot of coffee shop conversations.
An estimated 2/3 were college graduates, many of them with advanced degrees.
And they were charming people. When I first met some of them, I was really impressed.
Just before leaving for America, Bhagwan had begun a period of silence and semi-isolation. And for his first 3 years in Oregon, he would speak only to a few close confidants. He suffered from a host of physical problems, including diabetes, asthma, and chronic back pain. His caretaker, Vivek, was also his constant companion. Sheila arrived as Bhagwan's secretary.
One-on-one, she could be very fun and delightful. I mean, she had lots of energy, you know, like a very talkative friend. She was very smart and very driven and very ambitious.
She soon came to manage the ranch and much of the international business.
He did have daily meetings when Sheila reported to him her perspective of what was happening. Unfortunately, Sheila, very early on, had her own agenda.
Bhagwan's public silence meant that disciples could only hear his words on recordings and read them in books. He taught that sex should be free and liberating, even a stepping stone to enlightenment. And for that, he'd acquired an international reputation.
He said, I've written 300 books. 298 are on meditation, 2 are on sex, and you call me the sex guru. You are obsessed about sex. I am simply trying to help you be natural with sex so that you can stop being obsessive about it.
Stories of millions of dollars in unpaid taxes followed him from India. But in Oregon, his reputation as a free sex advocate got most of the attention. Local theaters screened a documentary about Bhagwan's ashram in Pune.
It became pretty popular because it showed people naked, it showed people hitting each other. It got pretty rough.
It was also denounced by the Rajneeshis as staged and inaccurate.
The Military Airlift Command flew at
Just 3 years earlier, in Jonestown, Guyana, some 900 followers of another charismatic leader had committed mass suicide.
I think there was a high tension developed through news media who seized on the question, could this be another Jonestown? And they pointed to the isolation, they pointed to the loyalty.
The media coverage right from the very beginning used the word cult. So once the word cult was in play, then they were fair game.
Most Rajneeshis wore shades of red and violet, which Bhagwan had said were the colors of sunrise. They called themselves sannyasins, from the ritual of sannyas, an initiation into seeking the truth. During sannyas, each person receives a mala, a string of beads with an image of Bhagwan, and the new sannyasin takes a new name.
Swadesh. My name, for example, means homeland or one who has returned home.
Bhagwan had chosen his own name several years earlier, and he would later change it again in 1989 to a Japanese title of honor, Osho. In time, people would use both names, Osho and Bhagwan, for the same man.
He was an incredibly powerful personality, and he had eyes that would literally drill holes in you. This was a unique individual. He had a personal magnetism. He knew how to be a guru.
But neither Bhagwan nor Sheila was prepared for what awaited them in Oregon. The state had recently adopted one of the toughest land use laws in the country, and the ranch was zoned for farm use only.
They described themselves as a commune. They were simple farmers, and they wanted to farm the land and create a lifestyle.
The zoning allowed only sparse housing and farm-related businesses, so Wasco County approved housing for about 90 people. But the Rajneeshis soon numbered in the hundreds. They continued to apply for permits to build barns, garages, and outbuildings, and the county finally began to sometimes say no.
But at that point, they felt that perhaps they weren't being treated fairly, and they began to change their attitude toward me and toward the office.
And they would demand public records. They would arrive on Monday morning, 20, 30, 40 of them, and go out throughout the county departments demanding any number of records. And when they first began that, were extraordinarily demanding. We want them, we're here, we want them now. Well, obviously, little county, Wasco County, with one or two employees in a department, was unable to comply with that. And they became very offensive. On Tuesday, they would be 30 or 40 more of them there, demanding almost the same stuff again and again and again.
The Rajneeshis announced their intent to build a city called Rajneeshpuram on 3 connected parcels of the ranch. But they would first need to incorporate the area, then work with the county to change the zoning from exclusive farm use, or EFU.
If there are enough people, I think it's 150 at the time, that want to be a city, the fact that it's on EFU land doesn't make any difference.
But many local people opposed the plan. They alerted a public interest land use group, Thousand Friends of Oregon, which would file suit to stop it. And so began a legal battle that would last for years. At first, the courts approved Rajneeshpuram's right to incorporate. The new city government granted building permits at a very fast rate. But the ruling judge had warned the Rajneeshis to proceed with caution, that challenges to the city's right to exist would continue, and that everything now going up might someday have to come down.
They were changing things, and I think contemporaneously with this, they were doing some things in Antelope which were not very popular.
Few people outside of Antelope, Oregon had ever paid much attention to this tiny town.
There were a lot of retired ranchers like my parents. There probably were about half people who had long histories in that area, and the other half were people who had decided that Antelope was the ideal place to live.
Before Rajneeshpuram had begun to take shape, Thousand Friends had challenged all non-farm commercial activity at the ranch.
You can't publish a newsletter on a ranch that's supposed to, according to the land use laws, be a cattle ranch. We had to go to the nearest incorporated town to either receive or make a business call.
That town was just 20 miles away.
I believe it was Thousand Friends of Oregon said we needed to be an incorporated area. Why don't you go to Antelope?
So sannyasins went to Antelope, and the people in Antelope immediately felt invaded.
The Rajneeshis bought properties in town. They applied for a permit to build a printing and media distribution center, a permit which the city council denied.
They were really on our case about the denial. It proved to be a really controversial act.
There were a lot of people who really hated the Rajneeshis and what they were all about on several different levels. If it wasn't land use, it was religion, or just the way they treated people.
They started taking pictures of everybody. You come out your front door and there's some Rajneeshi with a camera taking your picture.
The citizens of Antelope did not like the harassment or the prospect of more Rajneeshis moving in.
And they decided to disincorporate the town. That was the only way they could stop us. So they put up a vote to disincorporate their town. Well, we didn't want that to happen.
Disincorporation could leave the Rajneeshis with no place to conduct their business. But to prevent that, they needed to vote in the upcoming election, and that meant they had to show an intent to live there.
We started buying up some of the homes that were for sale, and over 50% of the homes were for sale. And we started moving our people into town.
At that time, Oregonians could still register to vote up to and on the day of the election.
And of course, the Rajneesh controlled the election. They owned one of the houses across the street from the school where the election was held, and it was like, if 2 non-Rajneesh came in, then 3 or 4 Rajneesh would come in to register and vote.
Final tally, yes, 42, no, 55.
The Rajneesh vote prohibited the disincorporation of the city of Antelope.
In the meantime, Thousand Friends would step up its campaign against the Rajneeshis.
I do recall having an envelope from Thousand Friends with Ma Anand Sheila's picture on it and basically saying, do you want this to happen in your backyard?
And in the following election, the Rajneesh, of course, had the person power to pack the rolls, and their candidates were elected to the city council. They took over the city, renamed it City of Rajneesh, and of course, it just took over all operations within the city.
So let's open the meeting up at this time to public.
And Antelope is really what galvanized public opinion against them. The story was, you know, the Red Horde taking over the poor little town of Antelope.
Just down the road, a different story had been unfolding.
When the Rajneeshis came in, one of the things they did right away was set up gardens and a whole big farming operation. And it was all based on organic farming, which was sort of unusual at that time, especially on a large scale like that.
By 1983, about 3,000 people were living and working on the ranch.
Every one of those people was willing to do what was necessary. The heart surgeon would go out and help pick the vegetables from the fields, help build buildings, help build roads. The women would run heavy machinery, and they were good at it.
I just remembered earth movers and bulldozers and things working, it seemed like all the time. They had this big construction project going on, and it turned out they were building a dam.
That dam retained so much water that it increased the height of the water table immensely in the valley in which we lived.
And they also went out and they planted thousands and thousands of saplings up and down the creeks to rebuild the riparian zone. The stream sides were green and lush.
Wildlife came back in abundance. The number of species of birds just mushroomed, and it was just absolutely beautiful. It's just what used to be a total wasteland just became a virulent garden.
They built an airport, and a public transportation network crisscrossed the ranch.
It was like a little city just boing, popped up. The mall went up, all of a sudden had a main street, you know, they had clothing shops and you know, barber shop, and I mean, they had everything.
Sannyasins could deposit savings and extra cash into currency accounts for use in shops and restaurants, all open to the public as well.
Pretty soon, the joke was that if you want good food in Central Oregon, you went to Rajneesh Puram, you know, because they had the best food going there for a while.
That we meditate.
Visitors toured the ranch daily.
There were also carefully orchestrated parents' days, and people had on, you know, their best smiles and the most positive approaches to Rajneesh Puram. That was encouraged to allow people to continue connecting, but more important, parents were a very important source of revenue.
The commune was, in fact, spending a lot of money.
Hi, I'd like to speak to somebody in your credit department, please.
There were all these offices just dedicated to, you know, making blueprints and, you know, getting vendors with pipe and lumber and gravel. And so when they came in and started buying, you know, large amounts of building materials, that helped a lot of companies.
Everything at the ranch was state-of-the-art, including the open-air crematorium.
They were a big curiosity in the state. Everybody talked about them. People were just hungry for more information. What are they really like? You know, everybody wanted to know.
The media were provided wide-ranging access to the ranch. guided by a group of attractive young women.
The Twinkies were the hostesses, and it was a name that they gave themselves. And they were the face of Rajneeshpuram to the media. And we couldn't go anywhere without them.
Here we also have a sculptor exhibition.
They were very good at selling the good side of Rajneeshpuram.
Rajneeshi leadership began capitalizing on negative press too, all the better for their bottom line.
They would use those news stories to send to all the communes around the world and say, look at how we are being oppressed, you know, and we need your support. And so the communes would send money to Rajneeshpuram.
And many of the centers throughout the world earned money through having discotheques, through having restaurants. There were huge profits being made, and they all went to support the ranch.
Rajneeshpuram was the international headquarters. That's where everything emanated from, and that's where Bhagwan was.
Almost every single person in every one of those places all over the world wanted to come to the ranch.
Many did. One of the biggest moneymakers for the Rajneeshis centered around the annual World Celebration launched in 1982. The week-long festival attracted well over 5,000 paying visitors and up to 15,000 the following year.
People come to celebrate with our religious leader, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, and everything goes on from daily meditations. The main part of the day is when Bhagwan comes and sits with us for a ceremony called satsang in the morning.
Some of the things that we take for granted now, like meditation and yoga, originated in terms of American culture in places like Rajneeshpuram. They started out in these rather extreme groups and then became popularized.
Most of the visiting disciples stayed in newly constructed tent cities, while some opted for more comfortable accommodations at the Ranch Hotel.
For the festival, it's $120 per night, and that includes 3 meals a day, all the transportation around the ranch, and a tour.
Rajneeshi is a new phenomenon, and never before in the world intellectuals have gathered together and created an oasis in the desert. This is an example for the rest of the galaxy.
By now, Ma Anand Sheela had positioned herself as the undisputed leader of the commune. She surrounded herself with a small circle of women, or Mas, and together they ran the ranch.
They had total loyalty to Sheela, not to Bhagwan. Bhagwan's experiment was to put women in control of his organization. He said, I want women who live from the heart to be running things. If you fought with them, you'd probably be ordered off the ranch. We all considered being banished from the ranch as capital punishment because we were giving our whole life over to this thing.
These people loved Osho tremendously, wanted to be with him very, very much. It was the most important thing in their lives, perhaps, at that time. Sheela was able to use the love that the community had for Osho to require them to conform with what she told them to do.
I love my power. Why not? Bhagwan has taught me strength. And you think I'm going to waste my strength away?
In its heyday, Rajneeshpuram had the largest private fleet of Rolls-Royce automobiles in the country. All 94 were owned by a Rajneeshi trust, but used primarily by one man.
What do you give an enlightened being as a present? Well, if he takes joy in driving a Rolls Royce, that's what it is. And he loved driving his Rolls Royces. Bless his heart.
At first, Bhagwan had liked to venture away from the ranch.
On one occasion, I was driving out to Antelope for a city council meeting, and I met a Rolls Royce on the road, and people up in this country generally wave. Some wonder about that, but I've been one of those wavers for a long time, and so I waved to Bhagwan, and he didn't wave back. He went like this, obviously both hands off the wheel. I was driving a small car, and he was driving that great big one, and I decided not to wave at Bhagwan anymore.
He made regular drives into Madras, 50 miles away, where often he'd encounter a group of angry protesters. Eventually, his sannyasins convinced him to stay on the ranch, where he began the tradition of daily drive-bys.
You have to understand, these are people, a lot of the people had been in India, and they had been used to sitting with him every day for years, listening to the discourses. That wasn't happening anymore. It was in seclusion, so it was our opportunity to see him. All of his disciples would come out to wave, to say hi. Or our equivalent of the wave was to namaste. Namaste means the divine that is within me acknowledges the divine that is within you. And you would just honor him as he came by, and he would usually hold the wheel with one hand and do a one-handed namaste with the other.
Bhagwan and his cars generated a lot of press, but the guns, which started to appear at every drive-by, turned the public's fascination to worry. The Rajneeshis at first organized an armed security force for the summer festival in 1982.
We're informed by the local authorities that we cannot have a festival unless we have security. And in order to get security, we have to hire people with guns.
The ranch established its own peace force, as they called it. All peace force officers trained at the State Police Academy. Increasing ill will was being directed at Bhagwan and his sannyasins, as expressed in letters to editors across the state.
I am sure he was getting threats. I mean, the animosity that some people felt towards these people was intense.
Is anyone in mortal danger out here if they're coming in?
Well, considering the number of threats that we receive over the phone and in the mail and in person every day, yes, I would say we are.
Bhagwan's security people stepped up their protection with Uzi and Galil assault rifles in the summer of '83, after bombs exploded at the Rajneesh-owned hotel in Portland.
And I think people were truly worried that bombings, fire, attack on Bhagwan could be imminent on the ranch.
The security force opened one of its daily training sessions to the press.
We're here hopefully so that Wasco County can relax a little bit. These are trained people, they're sharp, they know what they're doing, and they're training with a lot more clarity than a lot of folks out there buying handguns over the counter.
It was a bit of a shock at first for most of us when we saw these things being brandished the way they were, and it was sending a message, but I think this is their poor understanding of PR, I mean, what message was it really sending? They may have thought it was sending a message that don't mess with us. What it was really sending as a message is these people are crazy and dangerous.
People from dozens of countries had come to live at Rajneeshpuram, some of them married U.S. citizens, to allow the foreign sannyasins to legally remain in Oregon. From the earliest days of Rancho Rajneesh, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, or INS, sought evidence that Bhagwan had advocated sham marriages for his foreign-born disciples. The status of his own visa came under scrutiny as well. He had come to the U.S. on a tourist visa, then applied for permanent residency as a religious teacher. In October 1982, he appeared at the offices of the INS in downtown Portland. For this day only, he would break his silence to answer questions about his work and his health, and alleged inconsistencies on his visa application.
In immigration, Sheila was the one who got the visa. If Sheila had turned that over to a lawyer from the very outset so that it had been handled appropriately, it could have been entirely legal. It was because of the way she approached things that she gave leverage to the immigration officials.
Get out of the way, please. Thank you.
Following this interview, the INS ruled that Bhagwan could not perform his religious duties because he was not speaking. And even if he were, his health issues would render him unable to do the job. That ruling would later be reversed, but the status of his visa would remain in limbo for years. Immigration issues were being fought on the federal level. Back in Antelope, a local conflict would prove pivotal to the commune's future. The battle between the ranchers and the Rajneeshis had surrounded the Antelope School. This would become ground zero, with children from both camps caught in the middle.
When our kids showed up in the school, they didn't like that. And the farmers all pulled their kids out of the school.
Rather than mix the children together, both sides agreed to redraw the 250 square mile school district. Only Antelope and Rancho Rajneesh would remain in the district, connected by a 1-foot wide strip of land. The ranchers' children would be bused miles away to Maupin or Madras. But another problem quickly emerged. The process had disqualified several ranchers from the school board. When sannyasins filled the vacant positions, the new Rajneeshi-controlled board voted to stop the redistricting plan. They declared the Antelope School open to all students, then withheld funds earmarked for busing the non-Rajneesh students to separate schools.
We're operating a public school, a legally constituted public school. It will be an excellent school with excellent teachers.
I don't like anybody that comes in and tries to take over a town, take over a school, and then one of them's already made the threat that they're going to own Oregon, they're going to turn Oregon red, and that don't sit with me.
How do the parents of children who lived here prior to the Rajneeshi move into this area feel about this school?
I don't think they like it either. They wouldn't be sending all their kids to Madras.
More questions developed. Was the Antelope School a public school or a religious school? Was it entitled to state funds? By now, Oregon's Attorney General David Frohnmeyer had been assessing the commune. In October 1983, he issued an opinion that affected far more than the school. He declared the city of Rajneeshpuram illegal on the grounds that it violated the separation of church and state.
The state's interest is ensuring that the cities of Oregon operate properly under the Oregon Constitution, which means they are not permitted to exercise or to assist religion in a pervasive way.
Dave Frohnmeyer has made a politically motivated decision, and the fact is that this decision, as far as we're concerned, is born out of bigotry, is born out of an attitude that is only worthy of fascists.
There was claims that the city couldn't exist because it was void because it was an establishment of religion. Certainly, there were arguable violations because Sheila was directly controlling day-to-day functions of the city government.
While state aid was released to the Antelope School, Rajneeshpuram's future would be tangled in court for the next 2 years.
Whatever Rajneeshis have done has done everything within the law above board. But your Attorney General, your county commissioners, have made many policies behind closed doors.
The year 1984 brought mounting hostilities. Rajneeshi leadership dug in deeper, vowing to stand their ground while others threatened to dismantle their town.
I will personally see to it that our community will provide feast after the bulldozers have been painted red with our blood.
There was so much of an us versus them attitude.
And Sheila loved it, because then she could say, oh, you've got to be loyal, look how much these people hate us. So it's a way of cultivating a bunker mentality on both sides.
Late that summer, Sheila unveiled a plan to take control of the commune's future. She called her plan, Share a Home.
Oh yeah, somebody was telling me about that.
I was called to Sheila's office and told that I was to go back east and gather street people and bring them back to the ranch.
I started receiving phone calls from radio stations and TV stations around the country Did you know there's a bus out here with people dressed in red recruiting these homeless people to go to the Dalles? And most of the homeless people they were picking up were Vietnam vets. And they would tell me they're offering free room and board, free food, free everything if they just go out there for a visit.
Most of the street people were single males, and all were over the age of 18.
You've got some good beer here.
So much joy here. You don't have to worry about walking down the street and getting stabbed or shot.
I mean, out here, you know, I work all day, you know, go to meditation in the morning. They have discos and stuff like that you can go to at night and everything. It's all right.
No, I don't want to go back out there in the world because nothing out there for me. No opportunities. Here I got opportunity.
We don't believe in charity because it humiliates people. Whatever surplus we have, we are offering to the people and helping them become self-sufficient.
Bullshit. I mean, we all saw through it.
Beloveds, if you are an American citizen, 18 years of age or over, you have the right to vote.
There was a county election coming that fall.
6th of November, you vote. I guarantee you there will be people to help you to vote and explain to you which are the good candidates, which are the candidates who are
It was Sheila's idea, if we got enough people on the ranch who are registered voters, that we could outnumber voters in Wasco County and put sannyasins on the county council. And then, you know, we could get all our stuff approved.
I thought it was really stupid. No matter what happened to the numbers, it was going to be a disaster in terms of how it would be perceived.
Over the next 2 months, about 4,000 street people arrived at the ranch. They lived mostly in tents and housing constructed for the summer festivals. It was Dan DeRoe's job to inspect the housing for violations, and there were many.
Things were a little more tense. There came a time when I was only permitted to go down to the ranch in a sheriff's car, with a deputy driving for my safety. I had to wear a bulletproof vest.
Even so, just accessing the ranch was becoming more and more difficult.
We were on the road in to the property, and we came across a vehicle that had been turned sideways in the road. There was no way to get around it. Ditches on each side.
What's that? It just quit.
You the driver? Who's the driver? What happened?
Well, just ran out of fuel. I guess the engine just cut out and I lost some steering.
They're trying to block the road here?
Well, I don't know if they're trying to. Obviously it is blocked.
We're most concerned about the tent structures that have gone up since September 10th when we came out last.
What's wrong with them being there?
They're in violation of zoning laws, and we have to enforce
out in the middle of the
laws.
desert, in violation of zoning laws.
This is exclusive farm use zoning, and we have to enforce our laws.
A member of the Rajneesh leadership came up the other side of the road.
Who did it? What happened?
What's the verdict?
Verdict is that I'm glad that the man's life is safe, and I don't give a shit about what people think about cynical approach.
And so we just turned around and left, went back to the Dalles.
Earlier that summer, 3 county commissioners had toured the ranch. 2 of them, including Judge William Hulse, became seriously ill after drinking a glass of water offered by this woman, Ma Anand Puja, director of the Rajneesh Medical Corporation. 2 weeks later, more than 750 people in the Dalles were sickened with salmonella poisoning.
The source of that poisoning was a real mystery.
Public health officials traced the outbreak to salad bars at several local restaurants, but failed to find a common source of contamination. In the meantime, Sheila had announced that Rajneeshis would run as write-in candidates in the upcoming election for county commissioner.
Ma Jaimala, is she here?
The atmosphere was very tense in the community prior to the election. No one knew what was going to happen.
We were still trying to keep as much of a lid on it and the calm approach to this so that Oregon wouldn't just be seen as this redneck backwoods place.
Norma Paulus's legal counsel called and said, we'll take over from here because after all, this is a state matter, an election matter. I was called to report to her office, and I was to tell no one. And there were a series of meetings, and there were representatives from the governor's office, the attorney general's office, the state police, and the county judge at that time, Bill Haltz. And the first time I went in, I had a little notepad and a pen, and I was told to put it away. There would be no notes, nothing written down about that meeting.
Under Oregon law, residents could easily register and vote by mail. But the law had a critical component.
I had the authority to put a stop to it if we'd had evidence that there was fraud.
On October 10th, a busload of street people was brought to the Wasco County Courthouse to register in a media event staged by the Rajneeshis. Election officials set their own plan in motion.
Can you all hear me? Because I have reason to believe there are organized efforts to fraudulently register people in Wasco County to vote in the November general election, I have decided to do a blanket rejection of all new voter registrations in Wasco County. As of now, the rejections will constitute automatic request for a hearing before a hearings officer.
And I think you're being very insulting to these people that are American citizens.
And we intend to practice and to participate in every political system that is here in America that we have fought and bled for.
There's thousands of people here that have received notices that they have to travel 200 miles round trip to have a hearing to see if they have a right to vote. Thousands of people who are Americans. What people told me was they think this process stinks. Anybody feel that way?
They didn't have the courage to accept you as people. And you fought for them. You fought for them. I'm going to fight for you.
Mr. Rodriguez.
The hearings proceeded in the Dalles, but few street people made the trip.
How long have you lived in Wasco County?
I've lived in Wasco County since the 15th of September.
Are there others who have finished the hearing process?
They were saying that I was crazy, that I was dishonest, that I was all these things.
Thank you.
But we were on the side of right. We had the law on our side, and we had lawyers that were committed to us to see this through.
I asked you to consider the decision of law that this man just made. It got very hostile. But bear it in mind, it's with people who were trying to deny us the ability to exercise our civil rights in a way into which we are entitled. It was my community, so there was nothing inappropriate or unethical for me to defend those people's rights to vote.
With defeat at the polls imminent, Sheila urged Rajneeshis to boycott the election. Fewer than 250 voted, while a record 93% of registered Wasco County residents, more than 13,000, cast their ballots.
You think the plan was that I would be interviewing a Rajneeshi county commissioner-elect at this time, had everything gone according to schedule?
Well, I think that was their plan, but it wasn't our plan.
The big question was what's going to happen after the vote. You know, how many of these people are going to be here after the vote is done. They don't need these people anymore.
Many of the Shara home people were simply bused to the nearest towns and dropped off.
How are you going to get home?
Hopefully, I'm going to hitchhike home, one way or the other.
People don't want them. This type of people dumped off here, and now they're not going to give them tickets to get back home. Where in the hell are they going to go?
Many were dumped in downtown Portland.
They're bringing in 30 to 40 guys a night. They took everything I had when I left Denver. I'm sleeping outside now, so I can sleep out here.
That was the beginning of the end, I think. That when the vote didn't go their way, and the homeless thing fell apart.
So her whole scheme collapsed.
By the end of 1984, almost all the street people were gone. In the turbulent week before the election, Rajneeshis had gathered for a surprise event.
I have a very, very special announcement to make to everybody in Rajneesh Mandir today, because tonight Bhagwan is beginning to talk about his religion.
But I cannot say, follow me. Who am I? But you have to follow.
For all the years that we'd seen this guy in Oregon, we'd never heard him talk. And then he started talking every day.
Then don't cling with the yesterday. It was beautiful, but it was beautiful yesterday.
Sheila had acquired great power in the role of speaking for Bhagwan. That role and her power would now be greatly diminished. She would spend much of the next year traveling and raising money in Europe. That and a court-ordered moratorium on construction made for relative quiet around the ranch, a sort of calm before the storm.
Bhagwan taught me integrity and honesty. And it is that same integrity and honesty that has made me choose to leave.
In mid-September 1985, Ma Anand Sheila resigned her position and left for West Germany, leaving behind a wake of alleged criminal activity. Several other top officials also left the commune.
Every time poison comes out, it's great.
Felt like there was a lot of secretive things around here, and people couldn't really talk what they really felt openly.
I think a lot of them thought that Sheila leaving was a good thing, but I don't think they realized that they were so close to the end of the whole experiment. And it was always a question how much Bhagwan actually knew what was going on. Was he part of this, or was he directing them? Nobody really knew.
When I was silent, I was completely unaware. People were writing letters to me, they were never reaching to me. They had created a small fascist state here.
With Sheila gone, many sannyasins had stepped forward to tell Bhagwan about Sheila's alleged crimes and abusive behavior. And within days of her departure, Bhagwan publicly condemned Sheila and her gang.
Now, these people are absolutely criminals.
He accused them of the salmonella poisonings in the Dalles, widespread wiretapping of the ranch, and the attempted murders of his companion and personal physician. Soon after, Bhagwan denounced the idea of a Rajneesh religion as Sheila's invention. Even wearing malas and the color red became optional.
I want my people to be absolutely free individuals. While I was in silence, Sheila has compiled the book of Rajneeshism, which I am going to tell them to make a good bonfire.
Fueled by Sheila's crimson robes, 4,000 copies of the book went up in flames. The media and the public had feared that Rajneeshpuram itself could disintegrate into another Jonestown. By now, the possibility seemed remote, but the potential for violence still loomed. When Bhagwan revealed the crimes committed by his sannyasins, he offered full cooperation with investigators, and within days, dozens of state police, FBI, and INS agents converged at Rajneeshpuram. With Peace Force help, they learned that hotel rooms, public phones, and even Bhagwan's house had been bugged. They discovered how-to manuals for evil deeds and more. For years, they'd been investigating sham marriages, and this was the first time outsiders had been given such extensive access to records at the ranch.
The question is, what is this investigation about? They say it's about these recent criminal allegations. My concern is that their apparent priorities are not consistent with what they say they're doing.
Their priorities are then?
Their priorities are to get Bhagwan out of this country and to damage this community, as far as I can see it.
The Rajneeshis had long been anticipating immigration indictments. Bhagwan himself was thought to be a target, and law enforcement officials had made plans to make the arrests.
We had an armed peace force, obviously the National Guard, and these guys have guns. That is why we were trying so hard to negotiate a voluntary surrender, that if there was an indictment, to avoid the potential for violence that could occur if they came out to make an arrest.
In late October 1985, a federal grand jury secretly handed down criminal charges. The U.S. Attorney in Portland would not release any details or discuss a voluntary surrender for Bhagwan.
I called back to the people at the ranch and said, he won't confirm or deny that there's an indictment. They decided that for his safety, to avoid confrontation, to avoid this potential for violence, he'd fly somewhere else for a while.
On Sunday, October 27th, 2 chartered Learjets landed at Rajneeshpuram, took on 7 passengers, and flew out. The pilots filed a flight plan for Charlotte, North Carolina.
Filing a flight plan with people taking pictures as you get on the plane is perhaps not well calculated as an escape.
Air traffic controllers across the country tracked the airplane's progress.
Both of them are carrying some of these Rajneesh people from Oregon. Oh, where that's called?
There was speculation that the planes might be headed to Bermuda.
He's transporting bad guys, hardened criminals, and if he deviates any from his route of flight, you gotta let Preston know he's gonna open line to security.
The planes landed in Charlotte.
I would like to announce today the return of an indictment by the federal grand jury sitting in Portland, naming Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, Ma Anand Sheila, and 6 other persons who have been charged in 35 counts with false statements being made to the government and conspiracy to defraud the government. They're in a jail facility, yes ma'am. And the Bhagwan is also in custody, in jail.
I had not been told about any indictments. It was their responsibility to inform me.
None of the other people arrested in Charlotte had been named on the indictment. Bhagwan remained in custody for 12 days, including a protracted 4-day cross-country trip back to Portland. Released on bail, he was welcomed home by joyous sannyasins.
What we're feeling here is an incredible connection with each other, an experience that we've had through being with Bhagwan, an experience which we still have, whatever happens.
Days later, on the advice of his personal attorney, he pled no contest to 2 charges against him.
One, that when he came to America, he had a preconceived intent to remain. Number 2, there were all of these arranged marriages, which in fact happened. It was claimed that he knew about one of them. That was the sole total of their evidence of his involvement.
The immigration case against Bhagwan had been years in the making, and the U.S. Attorney would later write that the primary goal of the investigation and prosecution was to have Rajneesh leave the country. As part of his plea arrangement, he paid a fine of $400,000. And on November 14, 1985, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh flew back to India.
I advised him to leave because I didn't think we could protect him in the United States.
In those final weeks, the legal battles over Rajneeshpuram began to resolve. A federal court judge decreed that Rajneeshpuram violated church-state separation laws and therefore could not exist. Ironically, the Oregon Supreme Court would later rule in favor of the Rajneeshis, saying their incorporation broke no land use laws.
Look, they built a city in the desert. It was a real deal when it was going. They did change the landscape, and it was a bustling place in its time.
Ma Anand Sheila and Ma Anand Puja pled guilty to federal wiretapping charges, arson, the county commissioner poisonings, and the salmonella poisonings in the Dalles. Informants further revealed that Sheila had planned to poison the entire water system in the Dalles, hoping to incapacitate voters prior to the 1984 election, and that Puja had tranquilized the imported street people with a powerful drug mixed in their beer and food. Both Sheila and Pooja served 2.5 years in federal prison.
It was only a few people at the top, the crust at the top of the Rajneesh empire, that were really doing evil things. And I think by and large, 99% of the people below that crust had no idea what was going on.
They were busy laying pipe and creating a city. They just didn't pay attention.
They destroyed themselves. I don't think it was external forces that really destroyed them, it was internally.
Ultimately, had they attempted to get along with their neighbors and not threaten at every turn, they would still be there today.
Less than a month after Bhagwan's departure, residents of Antelope rechristened their town with its original name.
You know, someone will write a book about this, and I will guarantee you that when that book comes out, the people that read it will say that it's fiction.
Today, the Christian organization Young Life owns the ranch and runs a youth and family camp there. With their spiritual master gone, residents had begun leaving almost immediately.
I've made a beautiful community here, and it feels very sad that I don't know when I'm going to see a lot of these people again.
These are my friends. This is my family, you know. So I'd like to stay in touch, surely.
The legacy that this county is left with from the Rajneesh is a distrust of strangers and a distrust of people from outside the community.
Hoping to get a deal?
Hope so. It's awful good equipment, so just like brand new stuff.
Everything at the ranch went up for sale.
There are no more parties in the hall where sannyasins used to celebrate Bhagwan's birthday. Rajneesh Mandir has become a warehouse full of second-hand furniture.
What he offered was the transformation of the human heart. And this country threw him out and went to a lot of expense and difficulty to get rid of him.
In December 1985, a wealthy Texas car dealer bought 83 of the Rolls Royces.
Those Rolls Royces were ready liquid cash when the ranch folded. That money was distributed to sannyasins who lived on the ranch so that they would have some money to start a new life.
And the commune itself is often seen in terms of bricks and mortar and restaurants and cows and chickens. To know what Rajneesh Puram was about, you had to look into people's eyes, you had to see why they were. We weren't here just for the beauty of the place, which is, it has a beauty, but it's pretty harsh and stark. We were here simply to live the lifestyle according to the vision of Bhagwan.
Architects, engineers, doctors, professors, all the religions in different ways, but they have forced everybody.
There's more about Rajneesh Puram on Oregon Experience Online. To learn more or to order a DVD of the show, visit opb.org.